Hello and welcome once again to Kitaabi Baatein. I'm Abhishek, also known as Books Wale Bhaiya. My guest today is historian Dr. Chandni Sengupta, about whom we'll be discussing her latest book, Hindu Heroes of Medieval Bharat. Before we start, I would like to brief introduction of Chandni Sengupta. Dr. Chandni Sengupta is a professor of history at Shri Aurobindo College in University of Delhi. Prior to this, she published another book called Reclaiming Hindu Temples. And this is the latest book, Hindu Heroes of Medieval Bharat, about which we'll be doing most of the discussion today. She's also contributed to several other publications. And Dr. Chandni, before we start, let's talk about history in general. So there are many definitions of history, first of all. And if we talk about the Indian history, so India has a very glorious past, if we say. But when it comes to history in the last couple of years, what we are seeing is, there are more than history, we're talking about narratives.
Yeah.
That there was a narrative which was there since post independence, is a narrative which is prevailing now, and many directly attributed to which government has been in power. So, how do you see this narrative play out when you talk of history writing?
So, in fact, what I would like to begin by saying is that history has always been all about perspectives. Okay, so not only now, but even earlier, history is all about perspectives. The point of view of various historians is what is um, uh, the most important thing, and so facts cannot be changed, but what we put out in our books or our research papers or uh, these very informative podcasts or any other online source is all about perspective. So narrative building is something that should actually, according to me, in my opinion, should be a project. It should be a project of every historian, every a person who's interested in history as a subject. But at the same time, what kind of narrative are we building? So narrative building can be of all different kinds. What is, are we trying to seek the truth? What is the kind of history that we are wanting to teach our future generations? That is something that we need to keep in mind. It has always been about perspectives, and there is nothing wrong in narrative building. That is something that needs to be done at one level, because a lot of rewriting or revisiting history, or Indian history particularly, needs to be done. So the narrativizing part is not a problem. The point is that we need to correct or revisit what has been done in the past. So though it is all about perspectives, it is also important to understand that we need to look at various perspectives, at the same time look at what is the most plausible explanation for a certain event, which has taken place in history. And instead of looking at it from just one perspective, which is probably the economic perspective or the political perspective, we should look at it from various other perspectives as well. The socio-cultural, the religious perspective, all perspectives will probably provide us a more holistic understanding of history, not only Indian history, but history in general.
So, I was doing research on, how do people have seen history. So I got various quotes on the internet, and I noticed that practically everyone has some opinion on history. So I searched and I found not only the historians but many thinkers, even someone like Henry Ford, one of the most successful American businessmen. He also had an opinion on history, what history is. There are very interesting quotes. One of them I remember is that those who forget their history, they are doomed to repeat it. And something like a nation which forgets its history, a geography does so at its own peril. And then Napoleon, I said, he mentioned something like that, history is a lie people believe. And there are very disparaging, comments on history, that historian is basically a failed novelist. So I read many things. And if we talk of present times, I remember a quote by Vikram Sampath, who said that history is a handmaiden of victors, and unless and until the lions have their own historians, the tales will always glorify the hunter. इतने जब आप डेफिनेशंस देखते हैं, आप एक हिस्टोरियन हैं, एक हिस्ट्री के टीचर हैं, हिस्ट्री के राइटर हैं, आपके व्यू में इतिहास वास्तव में क्या है?
अ, इतिहास वास्तव में फिर से मैं बोलूँगी कि हिस्टोरियन का पर्सपेक्टिव बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है, बहुत मैटर करता है। तो इतिहास को हम फैक्चुअली अगर देखें, तो फैक्ट्स को तो हम नहीं बदल सकते। अगर 1100 ईस्वी में या 1200 ईस्वी में अगर कुछ हुआ है, 13वीं सदी में अगर कुछ हुआ है, तो हम वो फैक्ट को हम नहीं बदल पाएंगे। या कोई अगर लड़ाई हुई है दो राजाओं के बीच में या दो साम्राज्यों के बीच में, तो हम उस चीज को तो नहीं बदल सकते, बट हम उसको किस वे में देख सकते हैं, किस वे में हमें उसको देखना चाहिए। जैसे आपको एक मैं एग्जांपल दे सकती हूँ कि विजयनगर किंगडम का जो बैटल्स और स्ट्रगल्स हुए थे बहमनी सल्तनत के साथ, अगर हम कृष्णदेवराय के टाइम पीरियड की बात करें, और if we talk about the Vijayanagar empire in general, तो हम कृष्णदेवराय को ग्रेट क्यों नहीं समझ सकते? हम इसको एक इस पर्सपेक्टिव से हम इस चीज ये हिस्ट्री इस पीरियड की जो हिस्ट्री है उसको हम ये क्यों इस पर्सपेक्टिव से क्यों नहीं देख सकते कि वो सिर्फ अपनी टेरिटरी को डिफेंड नहीं कर रहे थे, वो हिंदू धर्म को भी डिफेंड कर रहे थे। तो ये एक एक कल्चरल विक्ट्री भी थी, एक रिलीजियस विक्ट्री थी, एक सोशल विक्ट्री थी। तो ये सिर्फ एक टेरिटोरियल वॉर नहीं था। तो जो पर्सपेक्टिव है, मेरे हिसाब से मेरा जो इसमें कंटेंशन ये है कि हिस्टोरियन के पास सारे फैक्ट्स होते हैं। वी हैव ऑल द टूल्स, वी हैव ऑल द फैक्ट्स, ठीक है, और हमारे पास पूरी क्रोनोलॉजी है। हमारा जो मेन ड्यूटी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है एज हिस्टोरियंस, कि हम इस इन फैक्ट्स को हम कैसे नैरेटिवाइज करते हैं, इन फैक्ट्स को हम कैसे इसके डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव्स को हम कैसे स्टडी करते हैं, एंड इट शुड बी अ साइंटिफिक स्टडी। वी वी कैन नॉट निग्लेक्ट एनी पर्सपेक्टिव। तो हम डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव्स को स्टडी करके फिर हम अपनी ओपिनियन कैसे साझा कर सकते हैं लोगों के साथ। तो ये हमारा एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज भी होता है, बट हिस्टोरियन का यही मेन टास्क है कि हम कोई यूलोजिस्ट नहीं बने। हम जैसे पर्शियन क्रॉनिकलर्स थे, मोस्ट ऑफ देम जितने भी थे वो सब यूलोजीज लिखते थे। आप मुगल पीरियड में
Yes.
ले लीजिए या आप सल्तनत पीरियड में ले लीजिए, तो हिस्टोरियन का काम यूलोजी लिखना नहीं है। सिमिलरली कई सारे हमारे इतिहासकार 1970s के 80s के उन्होंने हिस्ट्री को एक ही सिर्फ पर्सपेक्टिव से लिखा, इकोनॉमिक हिस्ट्री
Mm.
के पर्सपेक्टिव से,
Mm.
मार्क्सिस्ट पर्सपेक्टिव से। तो ये भी हमारा कार्य नहीं है।
Mm.
हमारा काम ये है कि हम डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव्स को देखें। हम क्यों सिर्फ इकोनॉमिक हिस्ट्री पे फोकस करें? पॉलिटिकल हिस्ट्री भी उतनी इंपॉर्टेंट थी, सोशल हिस्ट्री इतनी इक्वली इंपॉर्टेंट थी, कल्चरल हिस्ट्री, रिलीजियस हिस्ट्री भी उतनी इंपॉर्टेंट थी। जब आप भक्ति मूवमेंट की बात करते हैं तो हम सिर्फ उसको कास्ट बेसिस पे या कास्ट के नैरेटिव से क्यों देखें? हम उसको एक स्पिरिचुअल नैरेटिव से क्यों ना देखें? तो अकॉर्डिंग टू मी द टास्क ऑफ द हिस्टोरियन is to look at various events, various facts, whatever has happened in history, whether it is contemporary history or ancient history or medieval, modern, whatever, whichever period of history that we are looking at in the Indian context or even world history. How do we interpret it? And the interpretation must be holistic in nature. So ye hamara
Yeah.
main task hai as historians. That is,
Mm.
of course it might sound very utopian, but a historian should be doing that, looking at history from various perspectives, and teaching history from those different perspectives. We should not just focus on one perspective or one theory or one school of thought. प्रॉब्लम यही आई है हमारे हिस्ट्री राइटिंग में भी और हिस्ट्री टीचिंग में भी। कई सालों में, कई वर्षों में जो मैंने भी एक्सपीरियंस किया है एज अ स्टूडेंट एंड एज अ टीचर बोथ, दैट एक ही पर्सपेक्टिव या एक ही थ्योरेटिकल पर्सपेक्टिव से हम पढ़ाते हैं या हमने पढ़ा है, या एक ही आइडियोलॉजिकल पर्सपेक्टिव से हमें पढ़ाया गया है। सो देन दैट इज वेयर द प्रॉब्लम अराइजेज। ये हमें इस चीज को क्वेश्चन भी करना चाहिए, इस चीज को हमें रेमेडी भी करना चाहिए एज
Yeah.
हिस्टोरियंस।
So you mentioned that historian should work at a very broad view, should be open to all viewpoints. As you said, it's more like a scientific process.
Yes.
Uh, Yet, if we talk of India, so there's one part which is an ancient Indian history, ancient medieval history. But if we come to the way history has been written, If you talk of, there's a history which is written by our ancestors. There are a lot many books. The Ashtarangini is a very old book. The Vedas, they in a sense form part of our history. Ramayana, Mahabharata, they are historical texts. But if we talk of history writing, the most prominent history writing aspect, unfortunately, is the what was written by the Britishers, because that's what many people studied, say in the past 200 years or so. Now, when Britishers wrote, of course, they had their own axe to grind. They wrote because they wanted to rule India, and for that they wanted to understand India, and they wanted to put a perspective so that ruling for them becomes easier. Because if Indians start having a negative view or demeaning view of their own culture, it will be easier to subjugate them. That is very much evident in the way the Britishers ruled India, for that matter, any other country. But as we are talking of India, so this is something which definitely happened. Why you think that after independence, when India was ruled by its own people, the colonial era was ended, but this Marxist school of thought which came in the name of, you can say, secularism and other principles or values which they believed in. Why is it that when our own people wrote, they wrote which is by any means was a very biased, one-sided view? Why that happened?
So one thing is that we need to go back a little and see what the background of the partition was. So the as we know that the Congress leadership at that time, they wanted to project that Bharat will be a secular country instead of a country like Pakistan, which is based on communal lines, which was divided on which was divided on religious lines. They wanted to project a very quote unquote secular idea of India. Now, what happened was that because of this forced secularization of our education system, it was not that nationalist history was not being written. Even in the pre-independence period, a lot of texts were written. You know, Early on in the 1950s, 1940s, also some historians worked on the nationalist perspective. But from the 1950s onwards, we see that a lot of books focused on the Marxist perspective. One was, of course, this entire notion of projecting India as a quote unquote secular, because the country, and they got the entire definition of secularism. They imported it from Europe. We have always believed in the idea of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. So I mean, we don't have to draw parallels with the European idea of secularism or the Western idea of secularism, but that's what they did. And so this idea of secularism that was thrust upon us, that was one reason primarily, and also another reason was this. You know. Very Of course, we practiced what is known as non-alignment, but we were in more ways than one aligned to the Soviet Union. So
Yes.
ideologically, Jawaharlal Nehru and a lot of the top brass of the Congress leadership was aligned to the Soviet Union at that time. So promoting this kind of history writing, the kind of history writing that scholars like Satish Chandra or Romila Thapar or Irfan Habib or any of these Marxist historians put out at that point of time was in fact a very well thought out strategy. A to kind of say that we practice a kind of secularism which is unquestionable, and we are very different from this communal entity which is part of our neighborhood now, unfortunately. And the second aspect was the fact that we were strongly aligned with the Soviet Union. Even if you look at the movies that were being made at that time, a lot of those movies had a lot of Soviet influence.
Yes.
Um, so history writing also had that influence, and a lot of Marxist historians, in fact, put out a lot of theories from beginning from the 1950s onwards. Uh, Definitely promoted, and you know I would say definitely promoted by the dispensation, by the government that was in power. It was a strategy which was adopted to make our education system, make the the entire learning process in a certain way. So if we look at the NCRT textbooks also now, of course, a lot of things have changed, but from the very primary level, from the school level itself, you tell people that Akbar is great, but
Yes.
Krishnadevaraya is not great, or the Chola kings were not great, or for that matter, Prithviraj Chauhan was not great. So you focus on Prithviraj Chauhan's defeat to Muhammad Ghori in 1192, but do not talk about his victory over Muhammad Ghori in 1191. So this was a very well thought out strategy which was adopted in order to appease the Soviets, and also to uh, thrust upon us this forced secularization, or this forced idea of secularism that they were very conscious about. This is something that was a government policy that they wanted to do, which actually had a great impact on history writing. So it was all agenda driven, as we all are aware that there was a particular dispensation which was in place, and um, they pushed a certain narrative. And obviously,
Right.
there were education ministers who forwarded that narrative, who supported that narrative, right from the top. That there was an effort to push a certain narrative as far as Indian history is concerned. So as I was saying, that certain kings became great, certain battles became more important, certain dynasties became more important, and certain other kings and dynasties
Right.
and time periods, they took a back seat. So this was a
Right.
deliberate effort. Yeah.
So, do you look at it that way, that India wanted to have a secular state, which on its own is a good idea if there is secularism, wanted a communal harmony, which is a noble ideal. Of course, there should be communal harmony in a country wherein people of different religions and thought processes they stay, and our history itself is a testimony that India has always assimilated various cultures. So thinking of having communal harmony on its own is a wonderful idea. When you talk of secularism, again, secularism actually means that actually the state and the religion, they are separate. So state has nothing to do with your religion. You are free to follow your religion, practice your religion, even propagate your religion. But would you say that when it came to history writing in the name of having communal harmony and secularism, the narrative became kind of anti-Hindu, or if not blatantly anti-Hindu, an ideal which, in the name of secularism, would have made Hindus believe in some way or other they were kind of inferior compared to other regimes, other people, other cultures. Because while we always speak of a glorious past, even there are historians today who say that this glorious Hindu past and all is a myth. This is a myth which the government or an organization like RSS promotes, that there was a glorious Hindu past. And as you mentioned, that we read that Akbar was great, but there were lot many Hindu kings as well. And for example, the fact that which you mentioned, that they did fight not only for the land, but for their culture as well, for their religion as well. Nothing of that sort we read in our books. So in this one-sided narrative, in this aim of communal harmony and everything, do you think it eventually translated to becoming an anti-Hindu narrative?
Oh yes, absolutely. Because it is one thing to respect all religious denominations, and we don't have to kind of ape the West in terms of what their definition of secularism is. We've always believed in the idea of Vasudev Kutumbakam. So our philosophy, dictates that we need to respect everybody, irrespective of which religion or caste or creed they belong to. So that is something that is inherent. It is an inherent part of our philosophy. Now what happened is that particularly in the post independence period, beginning from the 1950s onwards, um, the kind of history that was put out, the kind of history that was, to use a very corporate term, the kind of history that was marketed, and
Yes.
that was uh, forced upon us, was something that was not I would say that it was blatantly anti-Hindu. It was not, they were not trying to uh, do it on the margins. It was not something, it was very in your face, right? So the kind of history writing, that happened in the NCRT books, for example, as well as the kind of history that we were taught as students at the undergraduate level or at the postgraduate level also, it was extremely one-sided, so when for example we were taught about any Hindu king, we were taught that the Hindu king also destroyed temples. Why
Yes.
don't we consider that to be iconoclasm? But we were not taught the fact that iconoclasm was an inherent part of a certain religious ideology. And when people belonging to that religious ideology invaded India, in fact the term invasion, it was taught to us that we should not be using that term at all. So it was definitely, you said that it was not blatantly. I would say, I would take a step forward. I would say it was, blatantly anti-Hindu, because when we talk about say the fact that scholars like Richard Eaton have said that Hindu kings also destroyed temples, particularly in the south. He has mentioned that Hindu kings destroyed temples, but the motivations were different. They were not religious
Yes.
motivations. That was not justified, that was not told to us. So the kind of information, perspective is another thing, but even the kind of basic information that was put out was very, very lopsided, very one-sided. And in fact, I still remember in the college that I was studying in, we were told that you should not use this word invasion. There was no
Okay.
Turkish invasion, there was no Islamic invasion that ever took place. These were people who migrated, and they set up this wonderful sultanate, and they provided us with so much of political unity, and there was so much of prosperity under Alauddin Khalji. There was so much of prosperity because of the quote unquote reforms that he brought in. So this was the kind of narrative that was taught to us. So absolutely blatantly anti-Hindu, I would say. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and also not only anti-Hindu, anti all religious denominations that were birthed in India. For example, in Sikh history, the sacrifices that the Sikh gurus made, for example, does not find too much of place in our
Yes.
history books, in our history
True.
textbooks. The aspect of Jainism, again, Jainism is something that came up as opposed to Brahminism. But what is
Yes.
Jainism? What was its contribution, historical contribution? That is something that is not taught to us.
That is
Buddhism,
not
again,
true.
yeah, because there was caste system, and people converted to Buddhism and all of that. So what is taught to us is basically the fact that there was something inherently problematic with
Correct.
Sanatan Dharma
Yes.
or Hinduism, which is why Buddhism came up, Jainism came up. But Islamic invasion was not Islamic invasion. We cannot
Indeed.
use the word invasion. So
Very true.
definitely, it was quite blatant. It was quite in your face in terms of being, one-sided, completely one-sided narrative.
Very true. As you were talking of school books and college books, this reminds me of an incident from my childhood. So, my mom used to read some magazines of Vishwa Vijay Prakashan. It was a publishing house. It's still there in Jhandewala. And then we used to
Right.
read some of the comics published under that publishing house. So, in one of the magazines, I think there was an advertisement of a book. It was called Hindu Itihas Haron Ki Dastan.
Hmm.
I was a little kid who used to read only comics, and I did not even fully grasp the title. In fact, I had to check with my mom that Haro say what does it mean, like the garland or it's like losing. But somehow I remembered that Hindu itihas Haro ke das, and still remember something that क्यों हिंदू 200 साल तक गुलाम बने रहे. And the narrative goes something like as if the Hindus themselves were responsible, as we are saying. So not just academic books or books students study in the school or colleges, but even the general books, you can say, they
Right.
did tell a tale of the times we were in. This also reminds me of the book by Pawan Verma ji, The Great Hindu Civilization. Its Hindi edition was launched recently, Mahan Hindu Sabhyata. So he said that he is very proud to be a Hindu. He talks the glory of Hindu civilization, and he respectfully disagrees with the left-leaning historians.
Right.
And he says that we should just take history as it is. There was a Hindu civilization. There is ample evidence of that.
Right.
And to say that there was no Hindu history or Hindus did not have a history, a culture, a nation is blatantly wrong. And therein he said that I completely disagree with the leftist narrative on this particular point that there was no Hindu civilization when there is ample evidence for it. So, but yeah, unfortunately, those who are challenging it, we are only seeing the last 10 or 15 years that we are seeing such voices coming in. It's still very sad to see that it took 60, 70 years of Indian independence to have one Chandni Sengupta or one Vikram Sampath or one Sanjeev Sanyal to bring those narratives. But yeah, better late than never. So coming to your book, Hindu Heroes of Medieval Bharat, I remember the chapter you had, the first chapter on Raja Dahir and
Yep.
Lalita Ditya Muktapida.
Yep.
So yes, as you said, you brought out this point that yes, some Hindu rulers and that many Hindu rulers did lose the battles, that's for sure, but it was not at all a one-sided victory. And to glorify a particular narrative, we are somehow lost sight of the fact that even those who lost, they put a very brave fight. Some of the countries in the past, they were totally converted to a different religion. In India that has not been the case. There's still a large chunk of the original inhabitants which are Hindus. So Lalita Mukta Pira's history is there. Raja Dahi's history is there. Any other particular incident you would like to tell us, or maybe a broad sketch of these resistance if
Right.
you would like to tell us?
So, in my book, what I've basically done is that I've, covered the the period of the eighth century, the early eighth century, when very clearly the invasion of, the invasion, not the migration, but the invasion of Sindh, takes place, and um, Raja Dahir's, of course, loss is something that is glorified, but the kind of bravery with which he fought, and he was defeated only by means of treachery. And if you look at a lot of other cases, if you look at a lot of other events or a lot of other battles that were fought, Prithviraj Chauhan was also defeated by treachery. So a lot of these kings, they put up such a brave fight only to be defeated by treacherous means that were adopted by the Turks. So and later the Turco-Mongols or the Mughals. So it is not that we the the Hindu kings, we did not put up a brave fight, and it was definitely a fight that we put up not only to safeguard our territory, which a lot of historians say that it was just a battle for territory, it was just a political fight. It was not. It was something that we wanted to do for safeguarding our civilization. So when Raja Dahir was, fighting it out on the battlefield with Muhammad bin Qasim, he was not doing it only for his own kingdom. It was a civilizational war. Similarly, when we talk about the Chauhans, or we talk about even the Metrakas, or a lot of these smaller dynasties which people don't know of. For example, of course, the Karkota dynasty, of which Lalita Aditya Muktapida was a king. Thanks to books like the ones published by Amar Chitrakatha, or some references we at least know about Lalita Aditya Muktapida. Some of us, when we were children, we got to know about him. But then there are kings like Shiladitya the fourth or Shiladitya the fifth. There is Pulakeshan of the Chalukyas of Navsarika, Nagbhata one. We don't know of at all. Then the Sandhava dynasty again of Gujarat. Uh, Krishna Raja one, Aguka one. These are people we don't know of, and these were the ones. Nagbhata one, in fact, according to historian R.C. Majumdar, the Gurjara Pratiharas, they stood as the bulwarks against the Arabs. So the Arabs wanted to invade, further, and they were not, satisfied after the invasion of Sindh. They wanted to, come towards the Indian mainland, but it were these dynasties primarily based in Gujarat and Rajasthan and the western borders of India, that did not allow the Arabs to invade further territories. So these are names that most of us, probably, as students of history, as researchers, I mean, someone, I wasn't familiar. I would like to admit here that even I wasn't familiar with a lot of these names, even at the postgraduate level. So if you do not take personal interest to read about these things, or do some research at the personal level, you will never be able to gain any knowledge or any idea about who these people were, because these are not taught in school, or these are not taught at the undergraduate level, even though some revision has taken place as far as, say, a certain central university is concerned, or some central universities in India are concerned. But even then, the contribution of these Hindu kings is something that has not been highlighted as much as it should have been till now. And a lot of work needs to be done. So when we are teaching history, I think it is, the onus is on us as teachers, as professors, as writers, to tell our story. Why should we tell the story from their point of view? Why should
True.
not we shift the narrative and uh, tell a story which is from which highlights what our kings did? Yes, a lot of them got defeated. A lot of them were defeated on the battlefield, but a lot of them also defeated the Arabs. Why don't
Yes.
we talk about Nagbhata one? Why don't we talk about Bappa Rawal? We talk about the Arabs, we talk about the Turks, we don't talk about these people. So this is something that we need to do. We don't talk about the Hindu Shahi kingdom, which was such a vast empire which the Hindu Shahis ruled over the entire
Yes.
area of northern Punjab, what is known as the Northwest Frontier Province now, Afghanistan. That entire region was in fact part of their territory. We don't talk about people like Raja Jaipal, who gave such a tough fight to Mahmud Ghazni. Even before that, even Subuktajin, we don't talk about these people. And though there are a lot of inscriptional evidences, there's a lot of numismatic evidence. Not only textual evidence is of course there, but apart from textual sources, we also have inscriptional evidences about their greatness and about the kind of battles that they fought. In fact, he did not wait for Ghazni to attack his territory. He attacked Ghazni. He took his army to Ghazni. So that was like an offensive that he mounted against the
Right.
Ghaznavids. Now, this is something that it's never taught to us, not
True.
at the school level, not at the undergraduate level, not at the postgraduate level. So where do we get to know this history? If
Very true.
if someone does not pursue the subject, then
True.
you will always be in the dark. So this is
Very true.
something that it is, the onus is on us, some of us who have some taken some interest in the subject, for us to kind of not only present facts. Facts cannot be twisted, these are facts. But also to kind of uh, revisit our past and see that what the British told us, or what these Persian chroniclers told us, is probably just one side of the story. What the Marxist
Yes.
historians told us is just one side of the story. So we need
True.
to explore much more than what we were told.
Very true. As you talked about Amar Chitra Katha, so I have read a lot of Amar Chitra Katha,
Right,
and in childhood I used to read Tinkle magazine, which was their, I
right,
think, fortnightly publication. I'm always surprised that, fortunately, no one labeled the late Anand Pai ji as a Sanghi, because of the
yeah,
lot many, about 300 or so books, and he very much, glorified our history, and a large
right,
chunk of it was Hindu history. Many of the historical figures I got to know only from the Amachita Katha publications, Bappa Rawal and the kings in Assam, Lochit Borfukan and all. I got to
right.
know only through them. तो चांदी, जब हम बात कर रहे हैं इतिहास की, राजाओं की, और आपने एक बात करी कि कैसे उन्होंने रेजिस्ट करा इन्वेडर्स को, एक और एस्पेक्ट जो हिस्ट्री का, जिसको अगेन मुझे लगता है यूज किया जाता है टू डिमीन हिंदू कल्चर, रोल ऑफ वुमेन। आपने इतिहास को इतनी बारीकी से पढ़ा है, समझा है, आपके विचार में हिंदू वुमेन का, अगेन हिंदू वुमेन के रोल को ज्यादातर एक वो सती और जौहर के नजरिए से देखा गया है, और कहीं ना कहीं उसको इस्तेमाल किया गया है ये दिखाने के लिए कि हिंदू धर्म, हिंदू सभ्यता कैसे एंटी वुमेन रही हमेशा से। आपके रिसर्च के अनुसार हिंदू वुमेन का क्या स्पेस रहा सोसाइटी में?
हिंदू वेमेन का मेरे रिसर्च, अगर मैं अपनी रिसर्च की बात करूं तो जितना मैंने रिसर्च किया है इस फील्ड पे, मिडिवल हिस्ट्री में पर्टिकुलरली, तो मेरी पुस्तक में भी दो महिलाओं का मैंने वर्णन किया है।
Yes.
एक है रानी नाइकी देवी, जो कि गुजरात की चालुक्य डायनेस्टी की रानी थी। मूल राजा द्वितीय की माँ थी वो। और जो राजा दाहिर की जो अ, रानी थी, उनका भी मैंने इसमें वर्णन किया है कि उन्होंने कैसे अपने जो गहने होते थे उस टाइम पे, तो रानी बाई उनका नाम था, और उन्होंने अपने जो बेसिक इन लेट जो महिलाओं की जो इन्वेस्टमेंट्स होती हैं, अपने गहने तक उन्होंने बेच दिए। और सोल्जर्स को उन्होंने बोला कि आप ये गहने इनको बेच दीजिए, और जो आपको रिसोर्सेज चाहिए अरब्स को फाइट करने के लिए या उनको हराने के लिए, आप उस उन रिसोर्सेज को आप यूज करिए। रानी नाइकी देवी मूल राजा, क्योंकि उस टाइम पे माइनर थे, तो वो बहुत छोटे थे, तो उन्होंने अपने पिताजी को सक्सीड किया था, बट वो बहुत छोटे थे। तो उनकी जो माता थी, उनकी जो माता जी थी नाइकी देवी, उनका ज्यादा रोल माना जाता है। जो इस टाइम पे जब इन्होंने जो टर्किश इन्वेजन हुआ और जब टर्क्स को हराया गया, और
Right.
तो नाइकी देवी का रोल जो था वो बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट था, जो मोहम्मद घुरी को गुजरात से जो एकदम खदेड़ा गया, जो मैं कहती हूँ, ये टर्म यूज करना सही होगा। तो रानी नाइकी देवी का बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट रोल था। अम, आप मुगल टाइम पे भी देख लीजिए, तो कई सारी जो रानियां थी, उन्होंने बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट रोल प्ले किया था, बहुत एक डिसाइसिव रोल प्ले किया था। रानी दुर्गावती जो थी, उन्होंने अकबर को चैलेंज किया था। तो विमेन का जो रोल जो बताया गया है कि सती सती को भी हमने मिस इंटरप्रेट किया है। सती का भी जो कॉन्सेप्ट है, इसे मार्क्सिस्ट हिस्टोरियंस ने बहुत मिस इंटरप्रेट किया है। सती एक बहुत ही, आई वुड से, एक प्रैक्टिकल और प्रैग्मेटिक मेजर था। और जो राजघराने की जो महिलाएं थी, वो अपने ऑनर को कैसे बचाती? या तो
Right.
वो किडनैप हो जाती, या तो वो उस हैरम में चली जाती, जो इन्होंने क्रिएट किए हुए थे। और क्योंकि औरतों की जो स्थिति थी उस टाइम पे, तो उससे बचने के लिए, अपने ऑनर को बचाने के लिए, उनके पास और कोई रास्ता ही नहीं था। तो सती को हमें कॉन्टेक्स्ट में देखना पड़ेगा, सती को हमें कॉन्टेक्चुअलाइज करना पड़ेगा। सती को हम ये नहीं कह
Yes.
सकते कि सती इज समथिंग दैट के विमेन को हम डिमीन कर रहे हैं, या विमेन को हम कह रहे हैं कि वो क्यों उन्होंने सती परफॉर्म किया। हमें ये देखना पड़ेगा कि उस टाइम पे हिस्टोरिकल सिचुएशन क्या था।
Yeah.
तो हाँ, तो जैसे हम कहते हैं कि अलाउद्दीन खलजी के लिए रानी पद्मिनी, जब वो फिल्म भी रिलीज हुई थी, तो कई जो फेमिनिस्ट जो कहते हैं अपने आप को कोट अनकोट, और जो बहुत विमेन्स राइट्स की बात करते हैं, उन्होंने कहा था कि सती को डिपिक्ट करने की क्या आवश्यकता थी। बट मेरा मानना ये है कि सती को हमें कॉन्टेक्चुअलाइज करना चाहिए। हमें जौहर को कॉन्टेक्चुअलाइज करना चाहिए। हमें ये देखना चाहिए कि जौहर राजपूत महिलाओं ने क्यों परफॉर्म किया। क्या वो
Correct.
कैप्टिव्स की तरह रहती? क्योंकि कैप्टिव्स को कैसे ये टर्किश जो इन्वेडर्स थे, ये लोग कैसे उन्हें रखते थे, इसका भी हमें अच्छा आइडिया है। तो क्या अपने ऑनर को प्रिजर्व करने के लिए जौहर परफॉर्म करना कोई बुरी बात है? इस चीज को हमें देखना पड़ेगा, हमें उसको कॉन्टेक्चुअलाइज करना चाहिए।
Right.
इंस्टेड ऑफ सेइंग कि सती खराब है, जौहर करना खराब है, हमें देखना पड़ेगा कि हम उस टाइम पीरियड को कैसे देख रहे हैं, उसको कैसे हम यू नो उसकी हम रीडिंग कैसे कर रहे हैं, उसको हम कैसे एनालाइज कर रहे हैं। तो
Correct.
विमेन्स राइट्स की अगर बात करें, तो ये सारी विमेन लिबरेटेड थी, ये सारी, इन सबके पास राइट्स थे। रानी पद्मिनी को आप देखें, रानी दुर्गावती को आप देखें, कोई भी, आप रानी नाइकी देवी को देखें, रानी बाई को देखें, राजा ताहिर की जो वाइफ थी, आप किसी भी रानी को मिडिवल पीरियड की देख लें। ये लोग कहते हैं कि एंशिएंट इंडिया में भी ऋग्वेदिक पीरियड में महिलाओं के राइट्स नहीं थे, तो गार्गी, मैत्री, ये सब कैसे इतने बड़े स्कॉलर्स बने?
राइट।
तो
बिल्कुल।
विमेन को बहुत ही एक, अगेन आई वुड से कि इसमें ब्रिटिश कॉलोनियलिज्म का बहुत बड़ा हाथ है, कि उन्होंने बताया कि विमेन, इंडियन विमेन तो बस ऐसी ही रहती थी, वो मतलब उनका एक सर्टन रोल था सोसाइटी में, और वो उसी रोल को परस्यू करती थी. बट विमेन वर वॉरियर्स, एंड वी हैव सो मेनी एग्जांपल्स. नॉट ओनली रानी लक्ष्मीबाई, वो तो है ही, मतलब शी
राइट।
इज अ ग्रेट पर्सनालिटी, बट उनके अलावा भी हम बहुत सारे ऐसे एग्जाम्पल्स हैं, मॉडर्न पीरियड में देखें या हम मिडिवल में देखें, एंशंट में देखें. तो कौन कहता है कि विमेन उस टाइम पे लिबरेटेड नहीं थी? जब हमारे पास गार्गी, मैत्री,
राइट।
इतने सारे नॉलेजेबल नॉलेज गिवर्स की इनफैक्ट लिस्ट है, जब हमारे पास है इनके बारे में इंफॉर्मेशन, तो ये कौन सी हिस्ट्री राइटिंग है जो ये कहती है कि विमेन पिछड़ी थी और वो सिर्फ घरों में बंद थी और उन्हें वो कुछ नहीं कर पा रही थी? ऐसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. आई वुड से दैट जो विमेन का डिपिक्शन है हमारी हिस्ट्री बुक्स में भी, अगेन आई वुड गो बैक टू एनसीईआरटी. एनसीईआरटी से हम शुरू करते हैं एंशंट इंडिया में. उसमें अभी अगर रिविजन हुआ है तो आई एम नॉट आई डोंट नो अबाउट दैट, बट जो हमने पढ़ा है कपल ऑफ इयर्स अगो, भी मैंने एनसीईआरटी पे एक प्रोजेक्ट किया था, तो मैंने पढ़ा था कि एंशंट इंडिया में एक बहुत बड़ा एस्पेक्ट होता है कि विमेन का सब्जुगेशन और कास्ट सिस्टम. तो ये दोनों एस्पेक्ट्स हमें रिविजिट करने की बहुत आवश्यकता है, क्योंकि
बिल्कुल।
किस वे में हम कह सकते हैं कि विमेन लिबरेटेड नहीं थी, या विमेन ने पॉलिटिकल रोल प्ले नहीं किया, या सोशल रोल प्ले नहीं किया, रिलीजन में रोल प्ले नहीं किया, इकोनॉमी में रोल प्ले नहीं किया. हर जगह विमेन का रोल था. तो ये एक बहुत हमारा एक, आई वुड से कि एक, we've got this negative notion about women being in not women not being
Subjugated.
in,
Right. True.
women being subjugated, and women
Yes.
not being able to kind of contribute to society. They were
Right.
definitely contributing to society. अगर आप medieval period में भी देखें, जहाँ पे कि इतना अत्याचार होता था महिलाओं पे, जो women को कैप्टिव बना के ले जाते थे और हैरम्स में रखते थे या जो भी करते थे, उस टाइम पे भी कई सारी महिलाओं ने इनको जवाब दिया है, इनको चैलेंज
Hmm.
किया है, और पॉलिटिकली भी चैलेंज किया है, और हर वे में चैलेंज किया है. तो ये अगेन बहुत ही एक गलत नैरेटिव है.
बिल्कुल। तो चांदनी, हम बात कर रहे हैं, जैसे हमने कहा, हिस्टोरिकल नैरेटिव्स की, जैसे विमेन का, महिलाओं का हमने एग्जांपल दिया, वो भी एक नैरेटिव है. आज जब हम बात कर रहे हैं इस नैरेटिव के चेंज होने की, और जैसे हमने कहा एक नैरेटिव चलता है, आज हम नैरेटिव्स को चेंज कर रहे हैं, और आप और आपके जैसे और हिस्टोरियंस जो हैं, दो चैलेंज मुझे लगता है इसमें आते हैं. एक तो ये है कि आई थिंक वी हैव टू वेट for the time when authors like you would be writing our core textbooks at the school and university level, and their books would be prescribed. So that in itself is a very great idea, but it is likely to meet with a lot of resistance. So that first is, how do you see that? I don't think everyone would be happy with a book of, and no offense meant, but everyone would be happy with a book of Dr. Chandni, being taught in colleges. Not everyone would be happy with the narrative of Savarkar as portrayed by Vikram Sampath. Not everyone would be happy with history as of revolutionaries as mentioned by Sanjeev Sanyalji, and a history of Sardar Patel as mentioned by Hindol Sengupta, just to give a few examples. How do you see that challenge? That is one thing. Secondly, when we say we need to change the narrative, how much do we want to change? Do you think we just replace everything which was there in the last 70 years with what is written in the 10 years? How do you think this should go on?
So, to come to your first question, um, I think we should at least start by taking some baby steps. I'm not saying that you should change the curriculum entirely. Of course, to mention that some changes have already taken place at the undergraduate level, thanks to NEP and thanks to all the efforts being made by a lot of historians who are part of the process. But at the same time, again, when you look at the reading list, the syllabus might have changed, but the reading list is all the same. So why not introduce one or two books, that talk about a different perspective? We don't, I'm not someone who would say that you should not read a certain textbook. You can read Irfan Habib, you can read Romila Thapar. Go ahead and read it. Also read R.C. Majumdar. Also read
Yes.
Jadunath Sarkar. Why not? If you are reading about the Marxist ideology or the Marxist theory of Indian state or Indian history, why not read about the nationalist perspective? Shunning anything and and doing it on purpose is something that is dangerous. So what we can do is, like, we can probably uh, reintroduce uh, RC Majumdar, Jadunath Sarkar, and all other contemporary historians, people like Vikram Sampath ji, and um, everybody, Sanjeev Sanyal ji. We can introduce at least one text of theirs in the reading list, so that students at least know their names, because a lot of students don't know their names. A lot of people have never heard their names, so it is quite surprising, that when we have a discussion, and sometimes even I ask my students, and they have never heard their names. So how would they know that Jadunath Sarkar wrote such a wonderful volume on the decline of the Mughal Empire if it is not part of their reading list? So what
Yes.
I do is that I clearly mention that what you're reading, what is there in your reading list is, go ahead and read that for your exams. It is good, but also go beyond your exams, go beyond the classroom, go beyond what is given in your reading list, because I did that, and that takes personal effort. So that
Right.
takes personal effort. But if we introduce these books in the reading list, then students will take some initiative. So that is one thing that we need to do: reintroduce the nationalist narrative. And that the only way we can do it is make it a part of the reading list, and compulsory reading, not essential reading, what we call it,
Yeah.
in Delhi University at least, essential reading. So that students go to the library, look for these books, read these books, also do a comparative analysis of what the Marxists are saying and what the nationalists are saying. Why not? They should
True.
rack their brains and see what, and then they can form their own perspective if they want. And particularly at the postgraduate level, not so much at the undergraduate level, because things are uh, far more basic at the undergraduate level. But
Yes.
at least for postgraduate students, I think reintroducing uh, you know works of national scholars is an absolute must. So this is something that one should do. Now, coming to the second question, which is the fact that how much should be rewritten. I would say we just need to focus on our story. Let us not focus on the story of the invaders. Let us not
Yes.
focus on the story of the British. Of course, that's an important part of history. But why don't we talk about our story? Why don't we have a chapter on the Chauhans? Instead of
Correct.
having a chapter on Alauddin Khalji, or instead of having a chapter on the Turkish invasions, of course that is important, but we can have a chapter on the Chauhans. Why is Vijayanagar Empire not as important as the Mughal Empire?
Correct.
So why shouldn't we highlight our own history? We should be proud of why are we suffering from this Stockholm syndrome. That is something that we
Yes.
need to think about, and it'll take time. It's a very, very long drawn out process, and the fact that we've been able to write these books over the past couple of years is a positive sign. But again, it'll take a long, long time to kind of um, uh, popularize this, the fact that we need to focus on our glorious civilization. We need to focus
Yes.
on what our kings did, what the empires that existed in India did. Why should we always talk about the fact that we were a fragmentary state, or a segmented state? Why shouldn't we talk about the fact that uh, different empires, the existence of different empires only strengthens us politically? It's
Yes.
political deepening. It's not
Correct.
segmentation. So because a certain historian sitting in a certain university in Europe has said that it was a segmentary state, we have all gulped it down, and we believe that it is a segmentary state. So the Vijayanagar Empire,
Right.
according to a certain historian, is a segmentary state. It is not a unified state. Why shouldn't we be questioning that? Why shouldn't we be questioning um, a lot of the history that is written by Indian historians as well as Western historians? So that is something, and we should be focusing on our history. So when we talk about the medieval period, for example, the focus is entirely on the invaders. This is some sort of a Stockholm syndrome that we're suffering from.
True.
We need to put the flashlight on our kings, our empires, and their contribution to Indian history. So that is again
Right.
going to take a long time. The entire syllabus has to change. Textbooks have to change. A lot of change is needed, but at the same time, if we take some basic steps, at some point in time, it might happen.
True. No, that's quite a positive way to look at it. I'm when we talk of this, and I've talked to many authors. Coincidentally, many of them are historians. I always get reminded of one of the titles of Veer Savarkar's book in Hindi, which he wrote on the Mopla rebellion, and I read it in Hindi, and the title was Mopla, मुझे इससे क्या. So, and as you talked to Stockholm syndrome, and this reminds me of the lethargy which has been set in, and attitude of people like us whom are actually getting affected is "मुझे इससे क्या." And you will see many people who, even if not are, the with the Marxist bent of mind, if we talk of things like these which we are talking, they will say कि मुझे इससे क्या. How much does it matter कि history लेफ्टिस्ट ने लिखा है या राइट विंग ने लिखा है या वो. बट आई थिंक along with what we have mentioned, those are very practical points. So that is one thing which definitely needs to be addressed. We definitely need to move out of that stage कि मुझे इससे क्या. And yeah, and when we talk of things like that, how the economy is doing is more important. Are our farmers committing suicide? Those are very, very, very critical issues. But the problem is we look at them. When we say about history or culture, we always get reminded of these problems first. कि ये प्रॉब्लम्स पहले जैसे नहीं थे, अगर आप हिस्ट्री को ठीक करोगे तो ही ये प्रॉब्लम्स सामने. दे आर ऑलवेज लुक्ड एट together, whereas these two very, very different isolated problems, we need to improve a lot of things, and history is one of them. But you raised some very interesting points and very important points, Chandni. Just two questions, in fact. I read both of your books. I must say I was fascinated. When can we expect your third book?
So yes, I mean, I my academic commitments are keeping me very busy at the moment, but I have already started doing some research on my third book, which is
Oh,
going to
great.
be the it is going to be a continuation to the second book. So I'm going to cover the challengers who challenge the Mughal rulers. So that is what I'm
Wonderful.
going to be focusing on. Yeah. I've collected a lot of primary sources. So that work is going on. But as someone who has uh, already written two books, I would say that writing is a very long drawn out process, and it will take time. But I
Yes.
am at it. I am working on it, and the research is going on. And with my teaching responsibilities and other academic commitments, it will probably not be as easy to write the third book, but I'll try and work on it as soon as I can. Yeah.
That's great. So, all those who are watching, so this is one of the books authored by Dr. Chandni Sengupta. I, as a book reviewer, very strongly recommend both of her books. I think no matter what political ideology or anything you subscribe to, no matter how you look at history, whether a left wing or right wing, I think this is a book which these are the books everyone should read, irrespective of what your belief system is. Thanks, Chani. It was wonderful talking to you. Only one thing is left, which we unfortunately can't do online, is that I will get the book signed by you. Whenever we get a chance to meet, probably as a Lit Fest or a
Definitely.
bookstore, we will definitely be getting these books signed. Thank you so much, Chani. It was a very enlightening session. Wonderful talking to you, and wish you all the best for your future books.
Thank you so much. It was really nice being on the show, and thank you so much for having me on the show and inviting me. And it was really nice to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chani. Thank you.